All right, let's get into family issues. Don't get it twisted, it's still early exchange. The reason we're talking about family, family is pivotal to development in every society because it's the closest unit in every society. Well, this time it's something that concerns Nigerian family, Nigerian husbands and wives, but the family issue is being handled in the UK. All right, let me break it down for you and just let you understand what I'm talking about. So, the UK Metropolitan Police seem to have stirred waters when they chose to advise Nigerian wives to stop reporting their husbands to them and stop kicking or sending their husbands out of the home. This came against the backdrop that there have been several reports from Nigerian wives about domestic issues involving them and their husbands. So this appeal or warning, depending how you say it, but let's just say this appeal was made at a church service. The policeman, according to reports, who actually came up with this appeal is a Nigerian, but he had a consensus of his colleagues who were united in the appeal to Nigerian wives. To have a balanced discussion, we have a man and a woman here so that no gender will feel like they do not have representation here. So, Temitope Omole, who is in-house analyst here at SOUQ News and also head of programs at SOUQ News TV, but this time she'll be speaking as a woman, not as a journalist, is in the studio this morning. Good morning, Timmy. All right, to my left-hand side is a man, Sam Arujo, who is a policy expert and also public affairs analyst, and he'll be speaking as a man. Do I also say as a public affairs analyst? Yes, he can speak as both in this matter. Good morning, nice to have you.
Good morning, Blessing. My pleasure to be here.
All right, so this thing now, this family matter that has got into the UK, and it's now the UK police saying to Nigerian wives, stop reporting your husbands to us. Don't kick them out of the home. What does that say? Is it like, this is unconventional because the police usually would not really speak like that. But when you have such appeal from the police, what does it say about marriages, Nigerian marriages abroad, particularly in the UK?
Thank you very much indeed, Blessing. We have to put it into context. This advisory came about in the church service where a Nigerian policeman who works for the UK Metropolitan Police handed this down in the church service, advising that Nigerian wives should stop reporting and throwing their husband out of their houses. I think from the perspective of family conflict resolution mechanism, rather than bringing everything into the police, the advisory is coming in a way that wives should be able to, and husband, be able to resolve their marital issues without reporting every element of what goes on in their home to the police. Therefore, if you have issues of abuse, that becomes a criminal matter. There are the other issues that are within the purview of the family that can be resolved. So I think this element is just in advisory capacity to say that people should use conflict resolution mechanism within the framework of family relationship. That's the way I would like to look at it. Maybe as we progress the conversation, we can speak to specific issues and be able to situate this narrative for what intended in the public space.
All right, Timmy. So once somebody was responding to this online, a lady, she too was also making an appeal, and then she asked Nigerian wives, when you're back home, if you have issues with your husband, do you go to the Nigerian police to report to your husband? So what's the difference here? Why are you reporting your husbands to UK police?
So I'll say that the difference is the environment. So the typical Nigerian environment, we have our cultural thing laying a very deep stamp. Back home here, the husband is the head of the family. That doesn't change when you go to UK, of course, but the dynamics are different. It's a lot more flexible. Here, even though we already know that the man is the head of the family, he still finds time to mention it. I am the head of the family and all of that. And so, you know, he is in charge. You can't go to the Nigerian police to report your husband. You get there and they report your husband. Nigerian police say, if you like say something, they worry you. Go back home and settle it. But you know there that the woman looks like she gets more value. And so sometimes I think that what happens when the women move away from here is it's some sort of revenge mission. While you were here back home, the man showed you some level of pepper, if you like. And so you have just been like buying time and you're like, And then visa happened. And then crossing over happened. And then you take some time to maybe acclimatize into the environment and you realize that here, all these things that Femi used to get away with when we were in Nigeria.
Femi.
That's in UK. Femi is not going to get away with it because I'm going to show Femi that here it's not business as usual. So if Femi shouts at me and I get scared and I think maybe he will lick his hands.
You get scared.
I get scared.
We're going to come back to that later.
Okay.
All right. On the serious note, we're trying to,
deal with serious issues. Yes,
it's a serious issue.
It is.
It's becoming a trend. The UK, even in Canada, where the police are and say, okay, there's a need to see the family side of this. Now, I wanted to speak from the side of women who brought this women as a woman advocate. Let's paint a picture apart from, it's easier to criticize and say, okay, why did you do this? But while we're having this conversation, let's go deeper. What are some of the issues you think is fueling or are fueling this kind of trend? It's looking like this women are becoming bold to do this. And it's becoming a pattern, maybe because of the influence of some people they've met in that place. Even for those who are well cultured, maybe some wives who were taken from the village and then relocated abroad, you now discover that they also fall into what do you think is for? And what would be the plight of these women who are in this picture?
Like I said earlier, I think that sometimes a lot of things happen here, back home here in Nigeria, that shouldn't happen if you ask me. So you have a family setting. The husband has a 9 to 5, the wife also has a 9 to 5. The man closes at 5, the woman closes at 5. So when we come back home together, while my darling husband is at the table, maybe he hugs the kids and all of that, they watch TV together, he's changed, he's showered, but I may not have gotten the luxury of that time. I'll drop my bag, take off my shoes, head to the kitchen, wash my hands, don an apron and get to work, chop, and you're seasoning and nobody is even checking on you if the husband is not that kind of husband. Now, there are dynamics where that is different. The man also gets home, takes care, you come. But there are situations where, back here, some of our women get overwhelmed by the family dynamics. The husband is not necessarily very involved, unless, not generalizing, there are men who are involved, but on a larger scale, a man is a man in the African Nigerian setting, and the woman's place is defined. You now go away from this setting and go to a place where it looks like, so if I take a day off in the kitchen, I can actually breathe and drink water and drop call. You try it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. You get to work, your colleagues start to have discussions, and one of them is in Nigeria says, the last time my husband tried it, when I called police, when they landed, he didn't try it again. Until you start to, sometimes it's influence. I would also say there are women who have it fine. It's not as if something is wrong in their home. But they just get there too and they just kegbe, and you hear people saying, just do follow, you join bad gang. And so because somebody is saying it in the office that, my husband.
So it's a bandwagon effect.
I think it could be. It's not, all Nigerian men cannot be bad. And you cannot say that half of the Nigerian men abroad are horrible. But the things we take here, cultural values and all of that, we get there and just start to be like, okay, if Nike got away with it because she called the police, I tried. You do it once, you do it the second time. And then you understand that if you become single and you start to raise your children alone, the government will support you. You would get scared, you would get by. As against here where you're a single mom, you're raising kids alone, there's a stigma and all of that. But there, you can fly, you can brag with it. So I think the cultural differences influence, bandwagon effect, like you said, and some other things, not necessarily because of it.
Let me get to Sam. Could it be as a result of the material gains, the financial gains associated with these? Could it be a factor as well? And we're at a time where you have women now, they are more educated, they are more emboldened because of their human rights law and certain emancipation that taking place in the advanced world and even in the developing world. Could it be a factor because you know that once your husband is not in the picture, there are certain assets, there are certain gains, there are certain provisions, even by the state, that will come to you as a single mother. Could it also be another concern here, the material gains?
I think so, to some extent, that because of the cultural differences and the way those societies are wired, where the human rights favors women traditionally, in terms to the extent to which you can't do certain things, unlike the culture that you are coming from, that is a bit regimented in favor of men in most cases in this part of the world. But what is key is that the other families, the other nationals within the UK that may be going through certain elements of family relationship issues, but they don't call the police like the Nigerian family. So there's something wrong somewhere. For the police to bring this into the purview, that shows that there's a problem with this particular Nigerians in the diaspora bringing their families' issues to the police. So they will have taken the statistics to be able to throw that in the church ceremony, that please learn to do your conflict resolution mechanism at home rather than bringing everything that we're supposed to settle. So from that perspective, therefore, maybe for the material gain in terms of the kind of alimony that you can get, where there are issues, maybe you're able to take a house and all that. So that could be one of the reasons. But then this is putting a dot on the Nigerian family. Therefore, the advisory is to say, while you are in a new cultural environment where certain things are permissive, but then you are overdoing this, therefore go back and look at your cultural norms from where you are coming from and find a way to manage your relationship in a way that you don't bring everything to the police, maybe apart from domestic violence, which would be a threat to the woman, and everybody must report that to the police as well.
All right, so some men and some Nigerian men who are abroad, not just in the UK, in other countries, some have advanced their own issues and grievance, saying that you take a woman or you marry a woman in Nigeria, maybe the woman wasn't educated or she was educated in a discipline that you feel doesn't offer a much advantage where you currently live. So the man relocates with his family, takes the burden, financial burden of the relocation. And by the time the wife gets there, it feels, if you get into the nursing profession or you get into the medical profession, it gives you more opportunity. It sponsors that. So by the time she gets out, she begins to earn more than that probably starts, because she's now the big earner in the home. And after a while, there are problems. The woman calls the police on the man, and he's kicked out of the home because the police feel, okay, if there is tension, the man has to leave first while you try to resolve that. But while he's out, if there is a mortgage, he continues to pay that. If there are other bills, he continues to pay child support, even though he's not resident in the home with the man. At some point, the man gets frustrated and it becomes a violent situation, as we've seen in some cases where the man takes the lives of the woman and also takes his own life. In the time where the Jackpot syndrome is very high in Nigeria, what is the plight of children raised in such environments, in such homes?
Thank you very much. If you look at it from the perspective of the sociology of the family, one of the issues that you just painted, where people were on an equal term in terms of financial resources. So when people get in there, maybe do nursing, some other allied business that put a bigger pay, this is not really essentially coming from the woman. Some men become insecure because they were holding sway at a point where they were providing a lot of financial resources for the family. Here comes a woman who's earning times 3, times 4, or sometimes times 10 of what the man was earning. And they come into a family discussion in terms of making investment decision, and the wife is making some contribution. based on our earning ratio and all that. And the man, wait a minute, this is where you were before I brought you here. So it's more of a sociological issue, fundamentally, where people revenue changes overnight. Some people don't have the capacity to see women earning more than them. That may not necessarily be all the case. That's one level in terms of that issue. So people place a demand. People trying to have their independence to some extent. Sometimes people now question the independence. Maybe your wife works late hour and is returning late. Your head begins to spin, because of the kind of environment you are coming from. That independence. Is my wife still my wife? Is he into some other things? These are some of the issues, if you look at it from psychosocial element of what some of those issues, particularly in Canada, where men are taking gun to hack down their wives and all that. So those are some of the reasons. On the other hand, so once there is disruption in the family value, then the victim, more often than not, are the children who are innocent of that power struggle, where you're not able to resolve conflict in an amicable manner that will sustain the family value. Therefore, the advisory is that even when you earn more, even more than your husband, maybe your economic opportunity or fortune has changed, then you can be humble enough to be able to still respect those kind of values, despite the environment that is permissive of certain things. So I think culture is strong. If you look at Indian families abroad, their culture is number one. And you will hardly, if you look at the incidents of police, even in Canada, in the US, in the UK, India seems to have the least in terms of conflicts beyond their home that are in the public space, maybe a reportage to the police. So I think we need to discipline ourselves as men as well, to see that even when women earn money, it's for the economic good of the general family, rather than having this kind of insecurity based on the earning ratio.
Okay, I'd like to quickly speak on the children parts that Blessing raised when she was asking that question, because you asked the question about what happens to the children
in such relationship.
So I'll say that in the first, while I'm not trying to sound churchy, I know there's always a very strong prayer that they say that, may we not marry wrong. Because the truth is, once that foundation is destroyed, the righteous can literally do nothing about it. Once it didn't start right. So once the foundation was already faulty, you already know that this person has complex issues. You paired up. By the time you're dating, a girl knows a guy that when you need to push him too much, you're not at the same level, you already know that there's a problem. The Gen Z people say red flag. We red flag everything. You know, but you're like, okay, I can manage it, we'll do it, we'll go together. This one I can deal with. Especially when maybe the pocket is well worded, you're like, it's better to cry inside mentally than to cry on another. We will manage it.
Such sayings fly a lot these days.
And so you just manage the money. I mean, it changes the wardrobe, all of that. But at some point, you realize that all of that is not as important as the peace that you would need. So when children now start coming into this, your selfishness takes the front burner, and you do not realize that their lives they didn't ask to be a part of this, but they are the ones who suffer the brunt of some of these decisions. If you're not careful, welfare comes in. They take the kids. Sometimes some of these problems that happen in the homes, before the police is even hearing, the teachers are picking it from the school. The children are already coming to school distracted. Maybe the lunch pack is not what it used to look like. The children are forlorn in class. The grades are dropping. They start to ask questions. And then you know something is happening at home. Some of these children start to internalize their feelings. I mean, mommy is always in a bad mood these days. You can't even talk to her. Daddy is shouting, so you can't even reach out to him. They start to join gangs. They start to open up to people they don't have any business opening up to. So at the end of the day, the children suffer more. But then the selfishness of the two adults who are involved, it's not even allowing them to see through the discoloration of their personal issues, that these children are more important than this conversation.
All right, I'm going to ask you, Tini, because earlier while speaking, you said it looks like some form of revenge from the women. And if you look at the African society, it's a man's word, basically. Culture supports the men more than women. And so these women have come to a culture where they are preferred, they are priority over the men. Is there some form of aggressive emasculation, or some women seem to have PTSD from trauma that perhaps they haven't experienced but observed? What actually is the issue? Because some of the issues that are reported to the police by this advice seem to be trivial and petty. They're not enough for you to call the cops on your husband. So if they see it, even after making laws to protect women, as you can sort this by yourself, does this suggest there are deeper psychological issues that should be attended to?
Well, I'll still go back to that revenge mission thing, because a lot of times that is what it is. There's the traditional omugo thing that happens where a daughter gives birth. The mother goes to the daughter's house to help her raise the child at home. When Nigerian grandmas leave Nigeria to go to do omugo in US, in UK, Australia, they really are not in a hurry to come home unless the home is sweet. Some will go and be like, you know that your father will not release me for more than 2 weeks or 1 month. Let me quickly go. There are the ones that will say, this years that I have come, call your father and tell him I am not coming. Why are you not going if the home is sweet? And so it's both ways. Some women have stomached a lot for years. Deprivation of time, of attention, of money, of care, of love. Some have managed violence and all of that. And you know, in the Nigerian society, you want to remain married because you are better being married. That misses that
As a status thing.
as a status thing, and so they respect you more. And then you get into a setting, and then they ask you your name. You mention the name, and then they go Miss or Mrs. It's that important. So here, even if you are dying, you smile and wear your ring on your first finger. The two hands. But there, you realize that nobody cares if you're married, if you're a Miss or a Mrs. or the Miss with MS. Nobody really cares. Nobody's going to ask you, well, why are you with kids when you're not married? So they now ask themselves all of these things that I stomached. And these men have come here again. And some of the men don't learn. You have moved from the environment. You should stylishly get with the program. You're not going to all of a sudden change, but you know if you beat her here, you get into trouble. You to join a game or something, but start to adjust. Our men need to read the room. When you switch that place you've gotten there, and I mean, it rubs off on some of the women. A man comes in from the UK, he's not married, he comes here, he jokes with you, girl, boy, you fall in love, and he starts to tell you up front that I want to marry you, but you'll be here. I don't want my children to learn the US culture or the UK culture. I want us to train them in the way of so that they will speak our language. It's a lie. He's afraid that if you go there, you suddenly realize that you're all that, your box of chips and everything nice. And you're suddenly going to start, you will become what the Yoruba people are going to do, where you suddenly become a belle when you get out there and realize that I'm worth 10 times more than I've been told that I am worth. And so you now take on that power and you take everything that you can. Drag the man through the court of that state, get the life investments that, I mean, you get into US, you're there 20 years, you build your house, you have everything. The woman will get it from you in minutes, just because she knows how that law will favor her. Our men need to just realize that. So if you're here and you're African, you're head of the home, you're all of that, you get to the society that says no. Yes, alive. And some of our women also need to tone it down. Where's the place of forgiveness? Where's the place of moving on from the past? Where's the place of, it's till death do us part, is a vow. So there's a whole lot in the mix. There's a whole lot in the mix, if you ask me.
All right. Hey, let me seize this opportunity to advocate for men in the future. Why the eye of the storm? It's looking like we've forgotten them.
Okay.
So let me bring in Mr. Sam now. Some of these men, she raised something crucial. Could that be a factor? Maybe some of these men are also unwilling to learn the new culture. You're used to something for like 30 years of your life, 40 or 50 years of your life, where we're in an environment where the man is expected to provide everything, and now there's a shift. I also want us to talk about some of these men who are victims. How should they handle this kind of situation? This happened to a friend of mine. I'm not just being personal about it, but that's just to tell you this is a trend and it's happening. It's a serious issue where this girl was relocated from Nigeria, and then all of a sudden things fell apart. And the story is like the guy is back in Nigeria, has to remarry because this thing we're talking about took place. Now, let me direct this to Mr. Sam. Could it be the issue of ego, culture, not willing to learn the new culture? Then let's also address how should men handle this kind of situation? The issue of security or insecurity on the part of the men. But I don't think also it's a combination of several factors. But let's also address the men who are victims. Perhaps they are innocent. They've done what they should do in this situation. They've made the provision. They even own their house and all that. And eventually they are kicked out. How should an ideal man handle this kind of situation? Let me start with Mr. Sam, then you react to it.
Femi, thank you. I think we should be careful about a generalization of this kind of issue that is under discourse because there are men who have lived in the UK for years and they are not in this kind of scenarios where their wives report them. They came from this culture as well. So let's situate it properly. I think, like I mentioned earlier, there are issues of insecurity in terms of the power balance and the power relationship that change from time to time. But what is key is that sometimes some of these cases, with due respect to the women, some of these things are overbearing. Like Temi said earlier, there's a kind of overhang or a carryover of some of those issues that they have had back home. So some people really want to revenge on the other side. But if you look at the core issues, like the policeman mentioned in that church service, some of them are flimsy excuse that other families that are even entrenched in the UK, even the English people, may not even bring to the notice of the police. So there's a cultural disconnect sometimes. Maybe the kind of new words some people are now re-engineering into a newfound word where they think that everything has become a possibility. Then people are overreacting to some of these issues. And that's why I said we must not generalize in form of what is happening. But there are families that their social values and family values are intact. They have not had the cost to go to the police. People were married here even 20, 30 years before they migrated to the UK, to Canada and all that. But then they don't have this scenario. So I just think that there's a new awakening in terms of maybe a newer generation whose human rights issue, freedom, has become so wide in a manner of speaking that people just react to every issue that can be settled. But like you mentioned earlier, we must look at a balanced way of resolving this issue. You look at your own family setting, your culture. You look at your relationship at a point. You've been in a relationship, you have raised children, 3, 4 children. Maybe you've been married for 20, 10 years and all that. Now there's a small problem. And those blissful moments, as it were, one element, just get that off. I think it's just conflict resolution mechanism that can help to resolve this issue, whether you are in Nigeria, whether you are in the UK, in Canada, or in the US. So you need to temper some level of culture with your newfound world. Even what is human right? Your human right is limited to the extent to which you don't even go to the other space as well, because in some cases, men are equally abused and they are victims as well of these scenarios that we are painting. But then the women, based on the culture where they are coming from, where they are dispossessed, so to speak, of certain values, and now you have an environment where how you live, your values doesn't matter, whether you can raise your children maybe with 4 or 5 men. It doesn't matter in those cultures. But then our culture should equally guide us in terms of the values that we portray abroad.
All right, let me bring Temi in now. You know, some of these men, they die in silence because we're in an environment or a culture where men are not supposed to cry. You know, you hide your emotions even though they are human.
Yeah, man.
So address these men, perhaps who are even listening. You are from the angle of a woman, what would you expect in terms of managing this crisis and the disposition to this kind of behavior?
Let's start with saying that I think it's a call to action for the community of Nigerian men in these communities. So I have a friend who said that when he relocated to Canada, they were welcomed by a community of Nigerians in that community. And so they would set up and bring the jollof rice, moi moi, and all of the swallow, so that they welcome you with a feel of home and all of that. So I would like to say that whilst that looks really beautiful, I told myself that, okay, whilst that is nice, it might also be good to involve some sort of indoctrination into that welcome party. So here that we are, these are the things that exist, this will not fly and all of that. So I think that it's a call to action to men who have been here for a while, who understand how this works. That so for that man that has just gotten in with his family, maybe it would help to have a safe community where they can be handheld and get some sort of roadmap so that this kind of potholes can be avoided. Because I really think that whilst we women are very vocal, we get a lot of attention, media and all of that, when we start this cry for help. And a woman is emotional. I mean, I can imagine a woman trying to tell a story of being abused and all of that, even if she has been. Is it possible that a man and a woman are in a relationship and the man is constantly abusing the woman and the woman has no fault at all? Are you the type of woman, if the man says 1, you say 20? Or the man people will say the man is so quiet, you look at him, he's so calm. Oh, and she say at home, he's a monster, but we don't live with you. There was a point where everything was good. There was a point where life was perfect. So what happened to all of that? So whilst that, I think, needs to happen, a community that helps these men to settle in well and avoid these potholes, and also a community that welcomes this kind of men after it has happened. I also think that a pre-jackpot counseling thing should happen, maybe from the church level, however we want to look at it. But couples should come together and have a session to prepare them for that new life that they are going. You can get there and get swamped by the whole, all this looks new. It's like a child who you buy a new toy for. The child would dump the toy and then pick the new one. It's like they'll say, sorry, I'm going to say it in Yoruba. They say,
as long as you interpret.
They say, I mean, you see the new wife and then you want to abandon the old wife. That's what the Nigerian woman story looks like right now. The Canada, the Australia, the US is the new wife or the new husband. Nigeria becomes the old husband. So you get there and then the husband was bad in Nigeria, but there was a time it was good. So some of these things, where it's places counseling at whatever level that we want to look at it. Maybe immigration should help us. I mean, or something. But I think that there needs to be a lot more conscious effort made to deal with some of these issues. Prevention would always be better than resolution. So let's see.
All right, so I'm going to ask this. We've been talking about the Nigerian men getting there and some of them maybe having some form of shock because the environment and the laws and the culture are different. And so the Nigerian women are opened, their eyes are open to the fact that this culture protects them more. And so the things that they will take, and men will be men, when they are now abroad, if you know, I will not take this. But does that take away the fact that even in the home, there are roles, both genders, they each have their roles. We may both, or the man and the woman may both work and come back home. Does that mean that because you are in the UK, for instance, so when you come in, you can't make dinner as the woman, or you should expect that you are now both equals, and so you should treat yourself the other way. So when the man talks like, hey, don't speak to me in that manner because I'm in the UK. I'm asking because it seems like there's an over expectation from one gender. There is some exploitation. And where does that leave these laws that were made to protect the woman? At the time these laws were made, Nigerian women were not in mind. They were not in view. They were made to protect women. So Nigerian women came into that and began to enjoy it. now that the UK police are beginning to advise, which seems somehow like a complaint to like you're bothering us too much with your domestic issues, do you foresee some kind of review to these laws as it concerns immigrants?
Let me
Should
start.
some adjustment be done now ahead of that time?
No, I think the law, the basic human rights laws are universal laws. We have those laws here. What I think from the perspective of your initial conversation before the last question is values are driven at family units. So it doesn't have to do whether you're in the UK or in Canada or not. There are men who share responsibility even back in Nigeria, where they take certain responsibility as it were. So if you have a good understanding within your family unit and design the way you want to run that particular family, share responsibility, share financial management, you need to define those elements. Whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in the UK, Canada, once those values are well entrenched within the family, these issues of overburden, what I don't subscribe to is domestic violence. Every other marital conflict where you don't resort to abuse, those issues can be managed. And when we're growing up, in those days when we used to go to the cinema and watch India films, we had that kind of psychology that the Indian men were the best of men. But in recent time, if you look at the statistics in terms of abuse, in terms of rape, India is the top on the bar or pass chart. So the point is, one, each family need to design the way they do their own thing, irrespective of whatever environment you are. The human rights are universal. But then, I think people are overbearing in the UK, with due respect, that now we're in a new environment where human rights is the basis of living. Then every flimsy excuse, maybe your husband go to a party over the weekend and is coming in the morning and you just lock the person out based on the new environment. These are things that can be resolved amicably. So the advisory from the UK police, Metropolitan Police in particular, is that resolve your conflicts. Do not overwhelm us with your domestic issues. While your human right is there, but then there are certain things that you don't need to bring forth to the police all the time. So that advisory is welcome, and Nigerian men in the UK as well must find a way to process this, because the other culture, entrenched culture, particularly Indians in the UK, that you have less of this kind of reports.
All
so
right.
we need to be our sisters keep.
It's looking like we need to have part 2 of this conversation. But let's resist the temptation. We just have to wrap up now, and call it, a program. The point is, things like this will happen, but it's just not the crisis for how to manage them. And I think it's a lesson. Why in Nigeria you don't have more of this is there are mechanisms. The last thing
There are support systems even.
You have laws that take care of things like this without reporting to the police, and I hope we could learn better.
And then for the Nigerian men, we know that some other African countries, it seems like they prefer Nigerian men. They are big spenders. They seem to know how to shower women with gifts and every other thing.
Maybe that would be a plus to our CVN.
Yes, maybe we also want to appeal to Nigerian women that the thing that first make you decide that is a Nigerian man you will marry. By the time you get there, regardless of the culture and the opportunities, sometimes look back for the sake of the children. I'm not saying that you should die in violence, but some of those flimsy reasons that make you call the cops, you could just, because what you may not realize, it affects the children. Let's ensure that the family unit is kept close as best as possible. This is it for the week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Samuel, for being here. We'll see you again on Monday. The show continues Monday, 8 a.m. West African time. Follow us on our social media platforms as SOUQ News TV. Leave a comment in case you have a thought on this. Feel free, of course, to drop your comments. And blessing that you. Bye.
It's important to know that family crisis is inevitable, but what's more important is the maturity and the resolve to ensure that you manage this crisis. The parties that are involved deploy maturity and the resolve to make a change, and things will get better. I am Femi Adele. Thanks for watching. It's been a productive week, but it wouldn't have been without you. That's why we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being there. Don't forget, Market Insight comes up at 11. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your weekend.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.